there's a uniqueness in how my family functions and how what our needs are, what our desires are, what our goals are. And so I feel like God has specifically equipped me for my family unit.
Welcome to The Home and the Maker, sharing advice and encouragement about all topics homemaking and homesteading, and honoring the maker in all of it. Join Megan from Shine.fm for today's conversation.
So welcome to episode 2 of The Home and the Maker. So this episode has 2 parts all in one. We're talking about simple switches, kind of the beginning of the natural living journey, cleaner living, and then talking about embracing God's call as a homemaker. And so starting with the clean living, this can be overwhelming. There's a lot to look at, ingredients, not just with food, but products, beauty products, cleaning products, everything. So I wanted to have on the podcast as my guest today, Haley Armstrong, who was my grad school roommate. And I wanted to have this conversation with her because she was kind of diving into this as I met my now husband. So it was like both of these like voices at the same time introducing me to cleaner living. And a little bit more about Haley is that she is wife to Jordan, mama of 1.5-year-old Shay, and I'm so glad to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited and I'm excited to do this with you. And so good to talk to you.
Yes. So back to the grad school days. Of you were like diving into this. I remember like you were sitting on like this couch specifically, I think, and you were talking about like an Instagram page and like cleaner ingredients. And then one day there was like a whole new plant-based dish soap. So how did this begin for you?
I think a lot of it started my curiosity was piqued because I basically like idolize my older sister and everything that she does. I think she's like an amazing human being. And I admire her intentionality of just taking care of her family, serving her family, but doing it through what she feels the Lord is calling her to do. So she actually had started this journey of like cleaner living. And I was like, at first, very like, oh, I don't know if that's for me.
Mm-hmm.
She's a lot further down the road in the journey than I am. But that's what piqued my interest. And so she kind of started telling me about some different Instagram pages she was following. And like, she wasn't pushing it on me or anything like that. She literally was just talking to me about different things that they were doing to like cure a sickness or to, I don't know, things like that. And so I just started following the pages and then eventually like because I was scrolling social media probably more than I should have, it was catching my attention. And so that's probably I would say what got me started, the combination of those two things, my older sister and just like really trusting and believing in what she was doing and then also following the pages she had shared with me and starting to see and get insight on what they were calling out.
So besides the dish soap, what were some like, because I can't remember if there were like any other things that right from the start that you were like, oh, I need to make that change. What were some of those other things?
Yeah, some of the very first things that I swapped, and there's easy swaps that I've still continued today. So the dish soap, deodorant, and like deodorant was a really big one. And the science behind it was really intriguing. So, I was really like convinced on that one. I think immediately I started out with those two. I think I started looking at skincare, like
Mm-hmm.
cleaner skincare, and then honestly, food ingredients, like those were big things that I was looking at. And now the list has grown a little bit that I'm
Yeah.
paying attention to, but I think those were like the immediate few things I was
Mm-hmm.
looking at.
So as you've done this now, are you basically just like sticking to like what you're learning on Instagram? Are you doing any of the apps where like there was this guy in the grocery store who is scanning things? He goes, man, like, like, do you do any of that?
No, so I don't do any of that. My rule of thumb And everything is like, I feel like I'm very much an 80-20 household because I also have a toddler. So
Hmm.
like, he enjoys certain things, but also I control what he's exposed to for the most part. But then when he's like at grandma's house, he's exposed to other things that he
Right.
learns. So every once in a while, like we'll get things that maybe aren't great. But my rule of thumb when I'm grocery shopping specifically is if I can't read what the ingredient is, I'm probably like, oh, let me look for like there's 100 options on
Hmm.
the so I've found I feel like a lot of the healthier, better ingredient ones are usually a shelf or two above what's at eye level. And so I just immediately look up and I'm like,
Gotcha.
okay, let me look at this and
Yeah.
see what's on here. So that's kind of been my rule of thumb when I'm
Yeah.
at the store.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I saw like an influencer on Facebook and she was talking about like she doesn't want to be that. I think she called herself a crunchy mom.
Yeah.
Like to, not let her, like if her kids are at a birthday party, not letting them not have, or just allowing them to eat the cupcake that's got
Yes.
dye in it, just, because that's
Yeah.
part of childhood and allowing them that.
I enjoy those things too. I
Hmm.
grew up on those things. So, like, for me to be intentional about the products that I'm using, the ingredients that I'm eating, those are things that, honestly, like growing up, I just wasn't exposed to. I was drinking all of the good, like, sodas and all the candy, and
Kool-Aid.
it really wasn't like monitored that much.
Yeah.
And so, I grew up on those things and I know that they taste really good. But also, if he's exposed mainly to better ingredient things, my hope is that maybe he'll prefer those things.
Yeah. That's what
Oh,
my husband tells me.
yeah, like if I can have enough of this stuff, he'll be used to how that tastes and just prefer it rather than the sugary sweet.
Right.
I don't know.
So has this, like I was asked once if making these switches, if I have felt any healthier. And I was like, not really. I don't notice like a change in how I feel, but I do know like, at least psychologically for me, I feel good about like knowing what I'm either putting on my body or putting in my body. So have you noticed anything for you?
Yeah, I think I really notice I can tell a lot in pictures. And when I say that, I don't even mean like a drastic weight difference or something like that. But I look back to pictures even from a few months ago. We were going through a transition where my husband had started his new job, and I was like, no, we had already gotten rid of our house. And so I was staying with my mom for a few weeks until my husband found a place. So, anyways, during that transition, I was back at my mom's eating all
Mhm.
of the non-good things for me. And I just looked at a picture that my husband and I took around that time. And my face was, it looked like it was swollen to like no other.
Huh.
And at the time, I didn't even notice it, but now, I just think there's a lot of impact on sometimes that like the swelling and things like that in my face, but also my energy. Yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely notice the more intentional that we are with what we're eating and how we're fueling our bodies. Because if I'm really hungry and I choose to have a Dr. Pepper instead of like having an actual meal that has protein and has
Mhm.
like good carbs and things like that in it that I need
Yeah.
to keep my body going for the rest of the day, I'm probably not gonna, I'm just gonna like hit a really big wall in the
Mhm.
middle of the day and I'm not gonna feel great
Yeah.
continuing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, as you're introducing this, and you're dating Jordan at the same time, probably around that time.
Yeah.
So how was it kind of introducing Jordan to these things? So like you're kind of now being the one to introduce other people to
Mhm.
this. Like was he like receptive or was he already kind of about all this stuff anyways or
Yeah, he was already like, so I don't think he was intentional with some of the products like your dish soap or your deodorant or your toothpaste, things like that. But as far as eating goes, he was trying to just eat cleaner. He has brothers who like have been athletes. He was an athlete, and so he's grown up in like knowing what types of foods to eat to fuel your body and stuff. He actually like one really good food group for you that I completely avoided was seafood.
I
And
remember.
yeah, I was just totally not about it. And he's the one that got me onto eating like salmon and sometimes shrimp. I'm still a little about that, but mainly salmon. That's like the big thing. And so yeah, he was super receptive to it. And it wasn't even like a really deep conversation. It was just kind of like, this is what I use because it would just come up like in conversation. This is the deodorant that I'm using. I don't know. And so he would maybe ask questions why or why I was using that or why was I paying a little bit more for this deodorant than, the however much $5 deodorant he was
Yeah.
getting. And so then at that point I was able to explain to him my reasoning. He's like, yeah, that definitely makes sense. Okay.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, so it's totally fine. And he, I think, tends to now because we've been together a few years and we have a son that he wants to also eat well and have good ingredients and things like that. I think he pays more attention to it as well.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
is. So it is kind of a hard thing to navigate with it being sometimes those products are more expensive. So like how do you balance that maybe
Mhm.
as you're like in the grocery store or whatever?
Yeah, I think I always try to now, it's a little bit different. Food, I feel like usually the cost difference is like maybe $1 or
Hmm.
so more. When it comes to beauty products and just like health care
Yeah.
type of products, that is usually I notice where like the biggest cost difference is. And so I think it was just something where I had to just decide that's what I wanted and I wanted to be intentional about buying that. So if that meant again that I wasn't stopping to get my Dr. Pepper every day at the gas station. And I was giving that up sometimes to pay an extra $4 for a deodorant that I felt better about,
Right.
then that was worth it to
Yeah.
me. So
So
yeah.
good. So good. It's cool to hear like your perspective on this after having like walked that a little bit with you, like to hear some of the backstory. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, switching gears here into your role as mom, wife, homemaker, you are like a very driven with your career, and that's how like I've always pretty much known you. But how after having Shay, like God called you into just kind of stepping back into being like homemaker, being mom and wife. So, like, tell me how that transition has been.
Yeah, it's been a really great transition, and I feel like I have followed what God's call and direction has been every step of the way, and I
Hmm.
think that that's why I
Hmm.
feel that
Yeah,
way.
that's good.
And I think it was always my plan, like if I had kids, to continue working. I assumed I'd be working in a corporate organization. I would probably put them in daycare, pick them up after I was done at work. Things like that. And because I see that often.
Hmm.
I have friends who that's how they've chosen to support their kids. And I also have friends who like they're stay-at-home moms and they've devoted their lives towards that. And I think I always say that the Lord has guided me somewhere and he kind of just drags me and puts me there. It's not really a conversation. He just makes it happen. And
Yeah.
I don't really realize it until I look back on the whole process of how it happened. And I'm like, that was totally God doing that.
Hmm.
And so when Jordan and I found out that I was pregnant, I continued working through the whole pregnancy. I was working full time. My company was only giving me a 3-week paid maternity leave. And then I chose to take an additional 5 weeks unpaid. So, um, 8 weeks total. And I did try to make it work and I was trying to work and keep him home. I hadn't considered putting him into daycare or we weren't living near family where I could ask my
Mhm.
mom, like, hey, maybe this many days per week you could watch him or anything like that. Those weren't options to me. So my options were either keep him home with me while I worked, or it was find a daycare to put him in. And I felt really strongly like I wanted him to be home with me.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. And then it just continued to a point as he was getting older, he was getting more mobile. I felt like I was, this sounds really bad. I'm just being transparent. I was getting angry with him, like a 4 or 5 month
Mm,
old,
yeah.
because I couldn't complete the tasks that I needed to at work. Or
Mm,
I was in a work meeting and he needed me and needed my attention. And that was my personal experience. And I just was like, not, I just came to a wall one day and I was like, I can't keep doing this. This isn't right. And so I think the biggest factor that was making me try to make it work, to continue working full time and having him home was finances.
yeah.
It was scary to just like give up my portion of the finances to our monthly income. And so once I made that choice just to be very trusting that the Lord would provide for us, it still wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but I felt so much peace knowing that my attention wasn't so divided and that I wasn't getting angry or annoyed with my 5 month old because he just needed his mom. And so that was the beginning stages of it. And then as we've gone on, Jordan has asked me multiple times, like, would you like to start, you know, like looking for jobs? Are you okay where you're at? He's always checking in, which I really appreciate because I
Mhm.
think he wants to support me in whatever career direction I want to go. And I just, I at this point would not trade the days that I'm having with Shay for working. But I do love working. So all of that, and I have other passions that I like to maintain. And so I have my own just like side freelance stuff that I do through marketing and social media. And it works to my schedule, to Shay's schedule. And I can be very, very, I have a lot of flexibility
Yeah.
in doing that. So right now, I feel like I kind of have the best of both worlds, and that's a privilege, and I'm really thankful for that. But it has been a journey to get here. It was a lot of emotions,
Mhm.
to give up what I wanted to do, but God was just like, yeah, this isn't working. Like this isn't for you. That's not what we felt called to. And now I'm here about a year later and love where we are, and it
Yeah.
looks fantastic right now.
Yay. And now he's extremely mobile.
Yes, yes, he is. I just posted an Instagram story yesterday. He took off running laps around Dick's Sporting Goods, because I decided to not make him sit in the cart and
Mm.
instantly regretted that one. So, yeah,
I was like, how on earth is he doing this at 1.5? That's amazing.
exactly.
So God has brought you peace in this, but like I'm sure not all the days are easy. But like, what other kinds of things has God been teaching you as you've been wife, mom, homemaker?
Yeah, I think I never felt like so this is a good explanation of where I feel. So you texted me to do this podcast and I sent a screenshot of it to Jordan and he was like, that's so awesome. Like, how do you
Oh.
feel? Are you gonna do it? And I was like, why me? Like, I just feel very much like I haven't achieved like the vision of what, I feel like God's calling me to do yet. It's very much a process. And like I said, I look to my older sister. She's literally almost 10 years older than me. So she is much further along in life than I am, but I look to her and I'm like, wow, like I just love what she's doing. And so all of that just to say I have I never really felt like homemaker would be a term that people would like think of for me. And so now that like I'm somebody that came to mind, that's honestly, it's very flattering. I really appreciate it. And so I think I used to have a view of what homemaking was, and it was um I won't even get into that. But I used to have a view of what homemaking was, and I've been able to forge my own way of being a homemaker for what fits me, what fits my family. And it's all been done with God leading me.
Mhm.
And I think that is what is really special about it is that the term homemaker might make you think certain things or make you think you have to live up to certain expectations, but every single woman is different. Or
Mhm.
if it's a man staying home, I don't know.
Yeah.
But every single woman is different. So we each have our own ways of being a homemaker and contributing to our family in the way that God has specifically called us to.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a uniqueness in how my family functions and how what our needs are, what our desires are, what our goals are. And so I feel like God has specifically equipped me for my family unit.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I guess that kind of goes into the comparison game where I'm thinking,
Mhm. Yeah.
I could be doing this and this and this and this, but that's not what my family needs right now.
Yeah.
And as we go on, I'm sure that the Lord will reveal different things to me. But
Yeah.
right now, I know that He's got me exactly where I'm supposed to
Yeah. That's so good. So good. So even before you moved, like you're not necessarily close to family. So like how would you, because I imagine if I am able or called to that someday, like the days could probably get kind of lonely,
Yeah.
because you're just the only adult
Yeah.
until Jordan gets home. But how do you combat like those days that are kind of hard or lonely?
I think routine has been really good. Trying to really create a routine for me and Shay, and it kind of breaks up our day almost. Like I'm very much I need a routine, and I think Shay thrives off of a routine. Maybe not everyone is that way, but like every morning we will wake up and we go to the park, and then we usually are meeting up with other moms that have kids his age, and we will walk, we'll play at the park, come home, eat lunch, he takes a nap, then it's me time for a little bit. And then in the afternoon, we usually only have a couple hours before Jordan's home, and then like we get to spend time as a family. So I think that finding community has been a huge aspect in finding other moms who are in similar stages has been a huge help to me being further from family. And I think I was just telling someone the other day, not being near family and having a child has made me have to trust other people more,
Mm,
and have to be a lot more open because, if I am going to prioritize my relationship with my husband, or I need to do something and Jordan's at work and Shay needs to like somebody needs to watch him, then I have to be more trusting of other people and be intentional in their relationships that I'm building with them so that I can trust them with my child. So, yeah, that's I think what I have to say on that.
gotcha. So, also on the hard days, like staying encouraged could probably be hard too. So having community helps, but is there anything else that you do to stay encouraged? Like any books or devotionals or anything that's really like kind of lifted you up?
Yeah, I think being intentional about spending time with the Lord actually. And even just in the music, like in the morning, Shay and I will play music. Some of them are Christian songs, some of them are secular songs, but I think a lot of it gets our mindset right for the
Mhm.
day. Whether it's worship music or it's just like a fun Christian song or, different songs. I think it all contributes to getting our minds just put in a better place to tackle the day. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So good. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared. And yeah, you ask like, why me? And I'm like, like because you're my friend, you're in this, you're living in this, you're a part of the natural living, and but even just to hear you like share stuff is like, wow, that's a lot of good wisdom and stuff to share. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you asking me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Home and the Maker podcast. And for other podcasts from Shine.fm, visit the Shine.fm podcast channel.